And I mentioned earlier this morning, a very special guest, great friend of the studio as well, is in with us this morning, Dr. Andrew Browning. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, good. How are you?
I'm well. It's been, we were talking off air, it's been a while. When was it last time you were in here?
It was last year. It's a long time ago, right? So I think it was November last year, after my trip to CAR and a few other places.
Yeah, the time flies, doesn't it? Particularly as you're starting to get a few extra years. It's amazing how that happens. Now, so in this, in these few 6-7 months now, I think it's been since you've been in 6 months or thereabouts.
About 6 months. Yep.
What's been happening? You've had quite a few trips overseas.
Yeah, I've been backwards and forwards as usual. So I had a trip to Nepal. I would go there once a year. So we helped establish a fistula hospital there about 10 years ago, and I go back there and train doctors. And then a trip to, where did I go? South Sudan, Ethiopia and Tanzania, then back briefly before another trip to Tanzania and Uganda. So been back for a couple of weeks now, and in another 2 weeks I'm back again to Central African Republic and South Sudan. So it's backwards and forwards.
Mate, you are without a shadow of a doubt, you are probably the hardest and the hardest working, most travelled doctor I've ever met in my life.
Oh, there's a few of us around there.
You're the only one I've met from Barbara May, that's for sure. But there are, it is quite amazing the work that you do. And now, for those of you, maybe there's some listeners this morning who've just jumped on and thought, I've never heard Dr. Browning before. What is it that you actually do?
So I'm what's called a fistula surgeon, obstetric fistula. So that's a birth injury in women. Mm-hmm. So wherever women can't get access to healthcare, they're at risk of dying in labour. Yep. One place where we work, 1 in 12 women would die in their lifetime before we started working there from pregnancy. And for every woman that dies, another 20 or so get injured, and the injury I treat is a fistula. Mm-hmm. So caused by an obstructed labour. So baby gets stuck in labour. 1 in 20 women, wherever you are in the world, Australia, South Sudan, America, Ethiopia, yep. 1 in 20 women, the baby gets stuck when she's trying to have the baby in labour. So here that's diagnosed caesarean, but if you're in a little village in Africa with no hospitals, then you stay in labour for 5 days sometimes. So dead baby, usually unconscious when they deliver it, if they're alive. Often they die. And then they're left with a fistula, a huge hole between the bladder and the outside world, the birth canal, and the rectum, the birth canal, sometimes 10 centimetres in diameter. So they're leaking continually, smelling and ostracised, usually divorced. Often they're suicidal with this condition. Yeah,
well, so, it affects every single aspect of their life, doesn't it? Not just personally, but, in the villages they live, the community they're a part of, like you said, a lot of ostracisation, they just get basically outcasted, aren't they?
Yep, that's right. It happened here. I was actually reading a report from a hospital in Australia. It was talking about a patient, exactly the same, long labour, two-day labour for that lady, and got a fistula. Was talking about her treatment, and with very difficult treatment, but the report was from 1870. A long time ago. We don't see that sort of thing anymore in Australia. We used to, but now we don't, because we got hospitals, we got nurses, we got midwives, we got doctors.
Yeah, look, thank God for the medical profession here in Australia today, because it has just saved so many women's and children's lives over all this time. So, what are some of the ones that really stand out to you? Particularly, look, here on the coast, if you're going into labour or something like that, you can either phone an ambulance, or if you're sort of not ready to give birth right away, you can maybe jump in the car. Somebody can take you around to the local hospital, or you might have a midwife on scene, whatever. What are some of the time frames that you're looking at in Africa? It's phenomenal stuff.
Well, let me tell you the story about a patient of mine called Tensa. Her name's Tensa, from South Sudan. So I saw her in March. Now, Tensa, going back in her life as a teenager, she was growing up in a remote area of northern South Sudan, pretty arid, dusty, hot area. And she, as a teenager, was sent by her father to get married in a tribe quite a way away in the Nuba Mountains, it's called. And so she went, got married as a teenager, had 7 babies, started having babies as a teenager. 5 of them survived, 2 died. And she got pregnant again for her 8th baby, and did what she always does, and went to labour in her village, because there's no hospitals or nurses or doctors there. So she delivered all those other 7 babies alone. So she went into labour for 8th baby, but the baby got stuck. Must have been a bigger baby or coming out the wrong way.
Yeah.
So she was in labour for a day, still hadn't delivered. in labour for 2 days, alone in the village, still hadn't delivered. She knew that something was wrong because, she'd had 7 babies before. None of them had taken 2 days to deliver. So she thought she'd have to get to a hospital. She had enough awareness to get to the hospital. But the nearest hospital was a full day's walk away. So 2 days in labour, she got her eldest son and started walking.
Wow.
So a full day's walk. So after about 4 days of walking, though, the long labour was starting to affect the nerves to her legs. So her legs were starting to get numb and weak. And after 4 hours of walking, she couldn't stand anymore. She fell into a ditch. Her son waved down a three-wheeled vehicle. They call it a bajaj here. You might call it a tuk-tuk or something. Waved it down. The driver took pity on her, put her in the bajaj, and they started driving to the hospital. But the roads are pretty rocky, and these three-wheel vehicles are pretty unstable, so the bajaj flipped, and she was thrown from the vehicle, as was the driver and her son. The driver was pretty badly injured. She fortunately wasn't, neither was her son. So the son waved down someone else and who righted the bajaj with them. He could drive. They put the injured driver, her, in the bajaj, and off they went to the hospital. So when she got to the hospital, it was about 3 days had passed by now. She was been in labour for 3 days, pretty weak. So they did an operation to save her life. The baby had already died, but she had this huge fistula because of the long labour, all the tissues being crushed in her pelvis. She had this huge 10-centimetre hole to her bladder to the outside world, so leaking continually. Husband didn't want her back. So her son went back to his family, and she just stayed living on the streets in that town. And she lived like that, begging for 18 months. So there's another missionary from the Central Coast who actually works in a hospital in the Nuba Mountains and heard of her, and got her and flew her to us in Juba. Ten says she's never been in she'd been in a bajaj once before, and that flipped. So you imagine how terrified she was to go in an aeroplane. Anyway, she comes down, and I meet her. I'm only in South Sudan for a week, but we were due to operate on her on Monday, but she had really bad malaria, poor thing.
Wow.
So I couldn't operate. So we treated her with pretty strong drugs and just praying that she'd get better to be able to treat before I leave. So on the Friday, she was better the day before I left. And we operate with under spinal anaesthetic, so they're awake during the operation, numb from the waist down. And it's a difficult operation, have to reconstruct a whole new birth canal, new urethra.
Yeah.
Anyway, she's just singing really softly and peacefully during the operation. And I'm the only white fellow there. They're all speaking Nuer. And so the anaesthetist starts singing with her in Nuer, and so does my assistant surgeon. So they're all singing quietly together, and I say, "Oh, what are you singing?" And they said, "Oh, she's singing 'Jesus, there is no one like you.'"
Wow.
So this poor girl, she's never been to school, she's illiterate, and been through so much suffering, but she had a faith in Jesus who loves her, and that's got her through all this suffering. But anyway, she spoke to our chaplain the next day, and she said, "Look, I've been through all this suffering. I've lost my child. I've lost my dignity with this fistula. I've lost my family. But the biggest suffering in my life is that I left my brothers and sisters, 20 years ago. They're in a war zone. I have no idea if my mother and father or brother and sister is alive or dead. There's no way I can communicate. There's no way I can go back there." So the chaplain took a photo of her and put her here on his Facebook page and said, "Does anyone know this lady?"
Yeah.
Anyway, someone from that tribe, because they recognised the name from this particular tribe, put it on a tribal Facebook group, and that was distributed. And unbeknownst to her, 4 of her brothers and sisters had fled that area and were living in Juba, not far from the hospital. So they all got this message, and they all turned up en masse, 4 of them the next morning. She hadn't seen them for 20 years. So these 4 brothers and sisters walk into the ward, and Tensa, she had no idea. She was just screaming of delight and in tears of joy, and everyone else in the ward was too, just sharing that moment with her. It was just a beautiful, beautiful moment of reconciliation and restoration. So, Jesus, there is no one like you.
Yes, amen to that. That is, of all the stories that we've heard you tell, that is one of the most impactful I've ever heard anyway, at least, and it's just goes to show you the incredible work that not only you guys do on the ground over there, but Jesus loves everybody.
He certainly does.
He's into everybody. We are talking to our very, very special guest this morning, our great friend, Dr. Andrew Browning. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with him right after this. It's Rhema Brekky on your Tuesday morning. Our very special guest, Dr. Andrew Browning, is in the studio live with us this morning, and I mean, boy, oh boy, some of the things that you guys see and experience over there in Africa and different parts of the world that you go to, just mind-blowing stuff, but also seeing the hand of God moving powerfully in those. And you were just sharing an incredible story there before, Andrew, and I mean, you've got plenty of those, haven't you?
So many stories. I mean, I've met about 16,000 fistula patients, but we not only treat fistula, we prevent them as well. We prevent it by building maternity hospitals and ensuring women have a safe delivery, which is pretty important.
Yeah.
Saves women's lives. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, again, I was in the Afar Desert of Ethiopia. And just to show the importance of the full scope of what we do for the Barbara May Foundation, there's famine there at the moment. So we've got food relief for starving mothers and breastfeeding mothers. And while I was there, this lady called Halima was in our hospital. I was treating fistula patients, but Halima was pregnant with her first baby, and she was severely malnourished because of the famine. There's been conflict and locust plagues and drought. And she also had chronic malaria, which means that she was very weak. And, her blood level was a fraction of what it should be. So as the pregnancy progressed, she was getting weaker and weaker to the point that she couldn't stand. So she was from a remote nomadic village in the desert, but where my aunt's organisation, my aunt lives in the Afar Desert, has something like 1,000 employees and 300 health workers. One of her health workers was in the nomadic village, found her and brought her to the hospital. Couldn't stand, extremely pale, so fed her, gave her blood transfusion, resuscitated her, got her strong. She actually had a delivery. She would have died if she didn't. She was on her way to dying.
Yeah.
But was strong enough then, after a couple of, about a month or so, to deliver normally. She stayed with us in the hospital for a month. But after the delivery, live baby, beautiful baby girl, she bled severely and, again, at risk of dying. So the team just ran into action, was able to arrest the bleeding. She needed more blood again. And so her life was saved the second time. And both her and the baby certainly would have died if it wasn't for those networks that we fund through the Barbara May Foundation and those hospitals that we've built.
Yeah, like I said, incredible work, the hands and feet of Jesus. Now, with Barbara May Foundation, again, if somebody has just joined us this morning, maybe hearing you for the first time, can you just give us a really brief intro about what the Barbara May Foundation is and what it does?
Yeah, so we started the Barbara May Foundation in 2009. I was a missionary in Africa, and we needed some way to fund this fistula work I was doing around Africa. And also to prevent it, to build hospitals and provide free deliveries for pregnant women. So, last year we delivered 17,000 women for free across our networks. And, all thanks to the generous people in Australia, because these women, they're so poor, they can't afford it.
Yeah.
And so it's all offered to them for free. And it doesn't cost too much. I mean, what our cheapest hospital, 4 clinic visits, your blood test, your ultrasound, your delivery, 14% chance for cesarean, postnatal check, and immunise your baby, it costs $143. So all that and we get the same results as the hospitals here, as in we haven't had a single maternal death in that hospital since opening in 2011, or a fistula developed in that hospital. So we're very, very grateful. So and even $20 will train a birth attendant in the villages to deliver safely. So a little bit of money can go a long way.
That's incredible stuff. Now, if people want to get on board with the Barbara May Foundation, so into the work that you guys do over there, how can they go about that?
Yeah, just look us up, barbaramayfoundation.com. All the details are there. Join our prayer support group. Donate if you can. Just be part of what we're doing. And we're very, very grateful for all those people that do pray for us and support us. Without you, we couldn't do any of this.
Yep, absolutely. So, guys, get on board with the Barbara May Foundation. Just an incredible organisation, and the work that you've done. I mean, you've heard just the scratching of the surface this morning from Andrew about some of the things that go on over there. They see this multiple times every day of the week while they're over there, and again, lives are being saved, mums, bubs, and it impacts their whole life, not just them physically and stuff. Now, you've got a couple of you're heading back off again overseas. Where are some of the trips that you're going to? Yeah,
so in about 2 weeks, I think it is, I'm going back to Central Africa Republic. It's a place of great need, and then from there go to South Sudan. Then I'm back for about 2 weeks. Then I'm back to Malawi, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. Then I'm back for a couple of months, I think, after that, hopefully. So it'd be nice to sit down in Australia for a bit.
Exactly right. Andrew, as always, mate, a real pleasure for us to have you in the studio here this morning. And again, the Barbara May Foundation, guys, get on board with them. Just like I said, an incredible organisation. They really do life-saving work in some of the poorest nations on the planet, among some of the poorest people. And again, being the hands and feet of Jesus over there. Thanks so much for coming in, mate. Looking forward to the next time. So whenever you get back, let us know.
Great.
Love to have you back on the show, mate. It is Rhema Brekky on your Tuesday morning. Stay with us. We've got the news next.